In this video, you will acquire the knowledge to save tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars by reducing the amount of mortgage interest that you have to pay. And we'll do that by uncovering how to complete your mortgage payments years ahead of schedule. I'm Alex Stoermer. I'm a medical device engineer and self-made millionaire, and I love helping people radically improve their financial status. In part 1 of this video, we'll uncover how bad this mortgage interest situation really is. And then in part 2, we'll learn how your mortgage payment is actually calculated by the bank each month. Once you have that knowledge, you'll understand why the 5 interest reduction strategies that we'll cover in part 3 are so effective at paying your mortgage off early. And finally, in part 4, I'll provide you a table summarizing each of these 5 strategies and their results, so you can choose which is right for you or even combine them. Imagine what you'll do with no mortgage payment. If your loan amount was $275,000, how much money do you think you'd have to pay in addition to the $275,000 in principal? Well, based on the actual interest rate at the time of this video, you'll be paying an additional $383,000 in interest alone. Yes, it is that bad. In fact, let's quickly calculate and confirm this for ourselves using this loan amortization calculator that ships with Microsoft Excel. Now, we will quickly build our own version of this spreadsheet from scratch in a moment, but don't worry, it's easy. But to start, let's use this one with the loan of $275,000 at 7% interest. And there it is, $383,000 in change of your money that you get nothing for in return. Furthermore, the monthly mortgage payment in this scenario is $1,829, and of that, $1,604 is interest. That means only about 12% of our mortgage payment was actually used to pay down our loan. We wish we could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. But knowledge is power, and power leads to action. So let's now learn how this required interest payment is actually calculated, as the precursor to doing something intelligent about it. When we take out a mortgage, we are agreeing to pay a certain interest rate on a certain amount of money. In our example, we agreed to pay $275,000 at 7%. The way that concept is actually applied is this. The bank takes that 7% annual rate and divides it by 12. One chunk of interest for each month of the year. That's the monthly interest rate column, and as you can see, it never changes throughout the life of the loan. The monthly interest rate is then multiplied by the remaining loan at the beginning of the month, and that is the amount of interest we agreed to pay the bank at the end of that month. The next thing we told the bank after how much we wanted to borrow was how long we wanted to take to pay this loan off. In our example, this was 30 years, or 360 months. We now know that our first month's interest payment on the full $275,000 was the $1,604, and testing that within our spreadsheet, if we made that exact interest-only payment every month at the end of 360 months, we'd still owe exactly $275,000. But of course, we want to pay the house off, not just break even paying interest forever. And therefore, that means our actual monthly payment needs to be back calculated so that the bank still gets its 0.583% interest payment and the loan actually gets paid off in the intended 30 years. Now, of course, there's a formula for this, but so we can see how it works, we're going to make an educated guess and then iterate until we get it perfect, because this is how it actually works. By following that iterative process, we find that the needed total payment is $1,829. And we know that's the right number because after 360 months, that number takes the principal to its effective zero. So that's exactly how the application of interest rate works in a mortgage. Now, looking at the total interest paid calculation, you can see it is simply the addition of all the monthly interest payments. Therefore, in review, the monthly interest rate column and the total monthly payment column drive the rest of the spreadsheet. The monthly interest rate column is calculated as 1/12 of the annual interest, which is then multiplied by the remaining principal value in dollars, and that becomes what we owe the bank in interest. This calculation is made every month, and whatever is left over gets applied to paying down the actual loan. And therefore, the total amount paid for our $275,000 house at 7% is a shocking $658,000. Now, recency bias is such that we're tempted to get upset about this, and we're quick to quote the 2020 era mortgage rates of sub 3%. But the first reason we shouldn't feel so bad is that we fail to remember that mortgage rates in the 1980s peaked at around 14%, and at no time during the entire decade of the 1980s were they as low as they are now at 7%. At that 14% rate, our $275,000 house would cost a total of $1.2 million. Therefore, we have it better than our parents did. Nevertheless, paying any more in interest than we absolutely have to is not acceptable. So, what are we going to do about it? Because we learned that the same interest percentage is applied to the calculation each month and that it cannot change, all of our strategies should revolve around getting that principal number lower any way possible, and earlier is always better than later. The first example idea is to take our required monthly payment of $1,829 and execute the roundup approach. We'll round it up to an even $2,000, which is an increase of $171 a month. This takes our number of payments down from 360 to 279, or 81 months early, and the total interest to $282,000, down from $383,000. This reveals that just adding that $170 a month takes our interest total from more than the cost of the house to about even with the cost of the house. Next, we could take this good idea a step further and calculate what a total increase of, say, $400 a month would do, meaning going from $1,829 a month to $2,229 a month. This would take our number of payments down from 360 to only 219, or 141 months early, and it would reduce total interest paid from $383,000 to $212,000, now less than the cost of the house itself. As shocking as the amount of interest we have to pay using planned amounts is, it's equally as shocking how much we can save by paying comparatively little more each month. And as we learned, this is because the extra amount goes directly to the principal amount, which in turn directly lowers the wasted money we have to pay in interest. Now, if you're wondering how to make some of this extra money, I have a full framework for assessing opportunities to do just that, and I'll share that framework with you at the end of this video. Next, let's assume instead of monthly payments, we make bi-weekly payments. Now, this works because 52 weeks in a year divided by 2 is 26 payments, which is 13 payments in a year. This is compared to making the standard monthly-based payment, which is only 12 months a year. Aha! By making bi-weekly payments, we found a way to slip in an entire extra payment per year into the equation. But what is the benefit? This drops total interest from the $383,000 down to $287,000, a savings of $96,000, and a time savings of 76 months. I call example 4 tax returns and bonuses. Let's say you get a lump sum amount of money from your tax return in April, or an end of the year bonus at your company. It's $4,500 and you get excited to take some time off your mortgage. Applied early in the payoff period, let's say a year in, this method will take 17 months off the end of your mortgage and save you $27,900 in interest. Next, we'll get to the summary table. If you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up for the algorithm. It takes about a week of my time, literally 40 hours, and thousands of dollars in equipment to make these videos free for you, and so I'd really appreciate it. Now, there's nothing stopping us from acting financially as though we got a 20-year loan instead of a 30-year loan. And therefore, I call this idea the pretend you refinanced method. If we perform the same exercise of finding the necessary loan repayment value to go from a 360-month mortgage to a 240-month mortgage, the required payment comes out to $2,132 from the original $1,839. Not that much of an increase to save what adds up to 10 years of house payments and $146,000 in interest. All of these example ideas address the fundamental truth we uncovered, that reducing the principal amount early is the winning formula for paying any mortgage off early. Now, earlier I mentioned I'd also help you find some ways to make some of this extra money. In this video, you can check out my 5-step framework for categorizing side business ideas as 1, a waste of time, 2, good enough to make some extra mortgage payments, or 3, even filtering so strictly that only those with legitimate track records of making millions come out on your shortlist.